let's talk to this point about the structure of your organizations and companies. So we've all been, involved one way or another in the CDFI space, and foundations love or are starting to appreciate, I think, more and more the benefits of CDFIs and working with lending partners like CDFIs for a variety of reasons. So, great. However, the demand is also there for organizations like yours. So I guess my question is, maybe we start with Vivienne this time. Let's talk about the structure of Lend Donate. And clearly you could have set it up as a CDFI, but you chose not to. So if you could kind of walk us through those, that thinking, that would be really helpful. And then we'll hear from the gents.
Sure. We designed our platform to have loan minimums of 50,000. So we funded loans as small as 50,000 and as large as multi-million into one loan. That is not the typical CDFI lending sizes. So instead, what we've done is we partner with CDFIs where they become borrowers on our platform to source loan capital from accredited investors. Not all CDFIs have the reach into accredited investors. So this way we can get them a chunk, let's say $250,000. One of our good partners at the Capital Good Fund can chop it up into loans of a few $1,000s and lend it out. That's their area of expertise. We feel that we can help them bridge to accredited investors on our platform.
Okay, that's great, and we're going to get to that platform conversation momentarily. David, why is mission-driven finance a B Corp and not a CDFI? What was the thinking there?
We have that conversation regularly with our CDFI partners, but we really came to it from the standpoint of there's a lot of great CDFIs out there, Capital Good Fund that Vivienne mentioned just being one of them, but we've still got these gaps in the system. So if we're going to close the gaps, forming yet another CDFI and effectively competing with them for deals, we didn't think was going to close the gaps. The goal was doing things in ways where we can move money where they weren't. Part of that is related to accredited and other types of investors that Vivienne and Ted both talked about. The other big part of it is, I think part of the reason CDFIs have power is their tight regulations. It's why banks are comfortable. It's why they can move. But that means they don't have a lot of flexibility in ways to do things that are sometimes different. So we're often working with CDFIs where we can take a different part of the capital stack. We can run something off balance sheet for them. So we built a structure under different realms of regulations, more close to the registered investment advisor, SEC, that sort of thing, to say we need a lot more flexibility in the type of capital we move, how we can move it, the balance sheet structures, the blended capital stacks, where we can form different forms of capital ratios and types of investors than most CDFIs are able to put together on their balance sheet. So that's been our way to slot in alongside them and get capital moving where maybe even each of us on our own wouldn't be able to, but together we can create ways to move capital.
And Ted, thanks, David. Ted, you worked at a large CDFI.
That is not true, Mark. You are.
Oh, I thought that one organization that I first met you at was a CDFI.
I used to run the lending program at RSF Social Finance, which isn't a CDFI. Don't ask me any questions about CDFIs. I don't know about CDFIs other than the fact that they don't lend internationally.
Yeah,
which is what we do.
So I guess my question for the three of you is around looking for funding. And when you're talking with foundations, when you're talking with maybe government sector, when you're talking with high net worth individuals, banks, whatever, to your point, David, earlier, a lot of folks want to see that stamp of approval that you are a, US CDFI certified, blah, blah, blah. It gives them some sort of comfort. So I guess my question is, have you had any challenges, and how do you talk through the conversation around the fact that you're not a CDFI? And has that ever been an issue?
Absolutely. And I'd say especially now as CDFIs are really having their heyday, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of attention on them. A lot of them are doing great work.
Yeah.
So it's where if we're trying to pull bank capital or government programs coming through, lots of them are very much looking for CDFI or similar designation stamp of approval. So not having that is absolutely a higher hurdle. That said, when we look for other types of capital from wealth advisors, from accredited investors, from people really trying to do interesting bespoke work and types of products, those aren't appropriate for CDFIs. It's a different type of capital. As Vivienne was saying, there's very few that can even take individual investor capital, let alone take individual investor capital and direct it towards a particular project or a particular geography or anything like that. So for us, that's the role of blending these other types of capital in, which sort of requires that not CDFI, but it's a challenge. And those sides need, not unlike some of the CDFI areas, but to pull private investment capital, it's often an element of size and track record, right? Yeah. And even some of the big foundations, we have examples of big foundation with a multi-billion-dollar endowment. Their investment policy says minimum check size is 1% of their endowment. So you're talking tens of millions, and they won't be more than 10% of an investment vehicle. So until you're at 200, 300, 500 million under management, even the foundations that are supporting this work, let alone the pension plans, other sorts of things, they just can't play. And so that's really our goal, is breaking down some of those barriers.
Vivienne, how about over at Lend Donate?
We don't have that challenge yet, that the investors are requesting that we be a CDFI. The way I would say we're similar to CDFI without being one is that CDFIs are able to have access to some grant funding. So with the way that we work, as long as we also can help attract some free capital for the benefit of the borrowers, then I think then investors see us as serving a similar purpose. Mm-hmm. I'll say one more thing about CDFI. I don't know if you know, actually, Mark, I'm on the board of Eris Insights, a rating agency for CDFI. And very much like what David said, is the really large CDFIs that now has capital chasing them. The small to mid-size really do struggle still to get their names out and hustle to get their capital support. So I would encourage people really look into not just the large ones, look at the ratings and find the high quality small to mid-size that are serving locally.
Mm-hmm. A little plug, American nonprofits.
Yes.
Ted, anything you want to add to this conversation or?
No, I don't think so. I think some good points were made. CDFIs have a powerful role to play in our world, but they're not the end all be all.
Yeah. So one question, and again, focusing on CDFIs and the roles that they play, one thing is technical assistance. And I think some organizations do it better than others. It's very costly. Sometimes the TA that's provided sometimes can be self-serving to the CDFI. So it's all about like, how do I get Joe to get a loan from me? Just to be, frank. But other times it's really strong too, and it's helping Vivienne with her business model or whatever that may look like. What is the role of technical assistance at Beneficial?
Yeah, so first of all, we believe that our borrowers know their business far better than we do. That's why we lend them money in the first place. we don't presume that we can tell somebody how to run a water filter company in Guatemala or a solar company in Mexico. But once we make a loan, the success of our borrowers becomes very tightly aligned with our own success. And we know that we want to see that business have a lot of impact and repay our loan. And so as much as we can, we help. And I don't think technical assistance is necessarily the right term for what we do, but we make as many introductions as we possibly can. Introductions to new customers, supply chain, introductions to potential board members, investors. Any way that we can open doors for our borrowers is something that we do. We're helping, just last week, we were helping one of our borrowers open a bank account in a new country where thankfully we had a connection that was able to overcome a lot of the bureaucratic challenges they were facing. So we want to see our borrowers succeed, but we don't have the staff, we don't have the budget to provide, what I would call classic technical assistance. We also only work with social enterprises that have most of the things figured out. So I won't say that they've solved everything, but our borrowers have 3+ years of operating history. Most of them have $1 million or more of revenue, and they're growing businesses.
Well, and it's great too to hear somebody say, I see you, you know what you're doing. I have nothing to add here to tell you what to do because I'm sitting over here in Oregon or California or whatever,
Right.
and you're in the Philippines. I think that's a very humble approach too. And to
Thank
say, you know what you're doing. I don't know anything about the pineapple fiber market, but we can help you with financing.
That's correct. We stick to our knitting and it served us pretty well.
Yeah, and to me, that sounds like true partnership is what you're trying to do. It's like, okay, what's my value add here? One, I've got some dough, but two, I have a Rolodex, and how can we be helpful?
Right.
Yeah. Vivienne, what does TA look like at Lend Donate?
I actually am not that familiar with that definition of what that is, but based on the previous discussion, I can kind of gather what that is. Just like Ted, I must say I'm always inspired when I talk to our nonprofit leaders. They know what they're doing. They just need the funding to do it. And we've had a few success stories to prove that when some other people deny them of a loan or funding because they said, well, you're too early or you're too something else. We gave them a loan and they were hugely successful. So I see that we don't really need to provide that type of assistance. The one thing I'll say that's is not our core business, but what we have done is with younger nonprofits. So I think all of us kind of said we're looking for that 3-year history. Well, what if they're at 1 or 2 years or even earlier? So we've had nonprofits request for loans too early, and we've helped them facilitate almost like a PRI behind the scenes. So meaning that we help evaluate their supporter base to first structure the funding. They would have loved to have that seed capital as a donation. For one reason or another, they're not quite there yet for the donor to say it's yours. So we've structured it with the partnership of a donor advised fund to first structure as a loan, and then is fully forgivable. In today's term, we know it as PPP, but it's not given by the SBA. So it's just, here you go, here's a loan. You retain most of your employees, you get it forgiven at the end of whatever period. So the donor structured their forgiveness condition. And then for these younger nonprofits just getting started, they got their loan.
Well, we've got a couple questions stacking up from everything that you're sharing, Vivienne, including, I want to go back to DAFs momentarily. David, briefly, do you want to add anything to the TA conversation?
Only I'll say that I think much like the other two, we don't consider ourselves a formal TA provider. It's about being an engaged partner. However, we also, maybe like Vivienne, it's the upfront for us engagement as well of giving them more the benefit of the doubt, not just judging them based on a spreadsheet or a credit score or anything like that, but more about that engagement. So there's a indirect technical assistance through that with working with them. More of the effort for mission-driven finance over the last couple of years has actually been working with technical assistance providers around the country, whether Project Equity in Oakland, We Power in St. Louis, that are direct technical assistance providers, incubators, accelerators, entrepreneurial support organizations that need a capital solution because they can provide all the technical assistance in the world. And if the banks and the CDFIs and the venture capital funds still won't finance it, they're not succeeding with their goal in their community. So we're spending more time working with those, developing capital solutions for their entrepreneurs that are coming through their pipeline, where we're really running the capital alongside a technical assistance provider like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.